Time to go upon further review and break down the 49ers loss to the Arizona Cardinals, what I saw on film, where the 49ers go from here, and a quick turnaround to get ready for the Seattle Seahawks. So we're going to take this one a deeper dive into 49ers versus Cardinals, all that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. 49ers suffered a very unfortunate and very frustrating loss against the Arizona Cardinals. And there could be many reasons to determine how a team loses, but which reasons exactly did the 49ers have happen to them and why they lost? Is it self-inflicted? Do the Cardinals just execute at such a high level? Are the 49ers not as good as we thought? Is it the coaching? Is it the game planning? There's a lot of things that go into why a team could potentially lose a football game. And sometimes it's usually sprinkled that it's all those things combined in one way or the other. Sometimes it's a bad play call. Sometimes it's a great play call, but bad execution. And it just kind of sprinkles around. And sometimes it's just one player making a key mistake that ultimately causes the play to not work. With that being said, there was also some very good moments from the San Francisco 49ers in this game. The blocked field goal by Jordan Elliott, return for a touchdown by Deommodore Lenoir. Finally, special teams able to help out in some capacity. And that looked like it was going to get turned around, only to be compounded by Jake Moody not kicking the ball out of the end zone and then suffering a sprained ankle that's going to rely on the 49ers finding a new kicker for Thursday and beyond, as Moody is going to be out for several weeks. So this whole situation was just interesting. And there's several players on the 49ers that have called it weird. And I don't think that is a crazy thought process. Sometimes when you get into these lulls or you get into these times when you're not playing well, it feels out of sorts. You feel out of sorts. You feel like you don't belong. Something is just not right. That's why they call it righting the ship. The 49ers have to figure out how to right the ship, because right now, things are a little bit more convoluted. As my buddy Jay Hill says on the Ant Hill Show, it felt chunky. So far, that's what this season has felt, a little chunky. It's not smooth, and they've got to figure out exactly why. And so I really wanted to get deep into that and try to figure out and find some answers of what went wrong in this game and how the 49ers can correct it. If they're coaching mistakes, those are easy corrections. If they're execution mistakes, they can be corrected. You just have to work on it. The first part, though, is this is Tell Your Truth Monday. That's what they do. You tell the truth. You realize when you made mistakes and you correct it. We're going to get into that. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'll try to get to them this week. It's going to be a crazy week, short week, so bear with me as I try to get out, the content that I normally do, but on a shorter week. So there might not be some of the episodes you're expecting. And then I still got work that I'm doing on Patreon as well. So interesting week, short week. But it's still going to be a lot of fun. And the good news is the 49ers have a chance. With baseball, you have a chance to win the next day. Well, with the NFL this week, the 49ers have a chance to win real quick if they can beat the Arizona Cardinals. Seattle Seahawks. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for a chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. So the 49ers came into this football game with the expectation they were going to be able to defeat the Arizona Cardinals because the 49ers have been, let's just be honest, dominant in the NFC West over the last several years. Unfortunately, in this game, it looked very eerily similar to the last time they played an NFC West rival, the Los Angeles Rams, where they had a 10-point lead, and then that 10-point lead evaporated. Now, against the Rams, it was a missed field goal by Jake Moody. In this game against the Arizona Cardinals, the 49ers had no kicker to kick the field goals down the stretch, and that's a real problem. So you had to rely on getting into the end zone, and the 49ers definitely weren't able to do that down the stretch, but also during the first part of the game as well. Red zone offense for the 49ers has been a real problem. And it's not so much once they get into the 20 where the red zone starts, but it's really once they get inside the 10. Once they've gotten into the 10, it's been a real tough situation for the 49ers. And why is that? Well, part of the reason is just a shorter distance, right? Everything's more jam-packed together. There's a lot of bodies in a limited amount of space. Being able to spread out a team horizontally is one way to create space. But you've got to figure out how to consistently do that against these teams, and they're packing it up. They're saying, you're not going to run the football on us. And Kyle Shanahan's been trying to find creative ways. And last week I was saying, hey, find creative ways. Use Debo in the backfield in the red zone. Well, guess what? I've been complaining about it, and I went and watched the film, and guess who I found in the backfield? Debo Samuel. And guess what I found? Creative ways to try to get him open. It's not for lack of trying. What we've got right now is a little bit of lack of execution. And we've seen a 49ers red zone offense that last year was so good. 68% of the time they scored touchdowns. This year, they're in the 40s. It's not good. And that's a big reason why they're losing football games, because one of the reasons that a defense can be really good, if you look at elite defenses, a lot of times that's because they've got an offense that controls the clock. Now, for the 49ers, they do have time of possession wins in every single game. They just win the time of possession, even this one. But what happens is your defense, when the offense gets more opportunities, there's also more opportunities to score on your defense. So let's talk a little bit, though, before we talk so much about the red zone offense, let me talk a little bit about what the Cardinals did in this game to the 49ers. First off, when you talk about the Cardinals defense, they came out and run a six-man front for the most part. Of course, it varied up, by different formations and different personnels, but they came in with that intent on we are stopping the 49ers run game. Everyone has been running us over week after week. We can't allow that to happen. So they loaded up the box. They put 6 men on the line of scrimmage, and they made sure that they tried to cut off run lanes. But what they also did was give unique personnel groupings and looks to Brock Purdy and the 49ers that they don't normally see. Now, what am I talking about? Well, they've seen a 6-1-2, which they ran in this football game. They started seeing that from other teams last season. But they also saw 3-4 against their 11 personnel. 11 personnel is a sub package normally. So you bring on 3 wide receivers, that means that the defense normally goes to a nickel. So you can kind of get a certain look that you're looking for. It gets their nickel corner on the field, and then you feel like you can run pretty consistently against it. Cardinals, we're holding on the foot. We're holding you out of the run game. We're going to make it very difficult for you. So they stayed in their base 3-4 defense. They said, okay, you're not running the football even when you're in 11 personnel. You're going to have to find another way to do it, and you're going to have to do it by beating us through the air. So Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan did what any single play caller / quarterback should do, is they kept going to the pass. If you're wondering why they weren't sticking to the run as much early in the game, it's because of the looks the Arizona Cardinals are giving them. This is that robotic nature of football. You see a certain look and you're supposed to go to it. And it makes sense. You get light boxes, it just makes the most sense to attack it. That's exactly what the 49ers were trying to do. They were trying to loosen up the Arizona Cardinals defense and get them to go sub packages by winning in the passing game. And there were elements of the passing game that worked. Brock Purdy to Brandon Ayuk, it was back. Brandon Ayuk looked really good in this football game. He was creating separation. He was running good routes. He was getting yards after the catch. This is Brandon Ayuk that we were that we know and love and respect and want on the field for us. I think where it came to it, other places was there wasn't as much play for Deebo Samuel. Deebo normally terrorizes the Arizona Cardinals, but they didn't have an opportunity to get him the ball as much. In fact, he was only targeted 4 times. Juwan Jennings, who's had a tear, he's been on a tear all season, 4 targets. Deebo Samuel, the Arizona Cardinals killer normally, 4 targets. The targets were going to George Kittle, and he did a lot with them. He made some plays, 12 targets, 8 catches. And then you look at Brandon Ayuk, 12 targets, 8 catches. Both of those guys were getting opportunities, and they were making the most of them. So 49ers were definitely doing what they needed to do. They needed to throw the football. I don't have a problem with that. You run it occasionally and to keep them honest. Maybe you get a couple yards here and there, but really those are just to keep them honest. But then you've got to take advantage of throwing the football. The truth is, the 49ers should have just thrown the ball all over the Arizona Cardinals if they're in those sets. Some of the matchups that the 49ers were getting, it should have been wins. The zone coverages, they should have been finding holes. Brock Purdy should have been able to get the football out and accurate to his playmakers, and there were plays out there. When you get those kind of looks, you have to dominate. And they didn't. They didn't execute well enough. They didn't complete the passes they were supposed to complete. They didn't hold up on blocking when they were supposed to hold up. They didn't make the catches. George Kittle dropping the football when they were supposed to. They just had errors. It wasn't like one single player was having consistent errors. It was a cumulative effect. This guy made an error. That guy made an error. This guy made an error. And it was all at different times and ended up stalling this offense a little bit. So they ran the 6-1-2. They ran the 3-4 defense versus 11 personnel, and they put the onus on Brock Purdy in the 49ers passing game and said, hey, this is what you're going to do. Then they also, what they did was say, you're also not going to kill us with the vertical pass, which you've been killing everyone with lately. We're going to make Brock Purdy go down and find his check down, go down and find read 2, read 3. And for the most part, he wasn't able to consistently do it. He did pretty good. I don't want to be down on Brock Purdy too much. I think there are some areas of his game that weren't up to the level that I think he expects. Number one, he was about just over 50% completion rate. He's normally a 70% guy. He's normally a guy that, makes a lot of really good decisions, and I thought he held on to the football a little bit too much in this game. And it's not so much that he holds on to the football, because I don't have a problem if you hold on to the football longer because you have time, or if you scramble and you create more time. The problem is when that time runs out, you have to be able to get rid of the football and take the incompletion. Whether that is throwing it at someone's feet out of the way so you don't get intentional grounding, I'm okay with that if you're in the pocket. If you're outside the pocket and you're not going to get any positive yards and there's nowhere to go, throw the football away. And why do I bring that up? Because the 49ers in the second half had a situation where they had Mitch Wisnowski as the kicker, and he made his first career field goal as a kicker. So you're probably talking about a long of 30 yards for Mitch Wisnowski when kicking a field goal. That's not even really an extra point. So you've got to put the onus on the 49ers offense to score touchdowns. And I think that there's a certain situation in this game that was really huge for the 49ers. On 2nd and 10, Juwan Jennings jumped off sides. That pushed the 49ers back 5 yards for 2nd and 15. And then on the next play, Brock Purdy compounded the situation by scrambling left, scrambling right, and then ultimately taking a sack and a loss of 8. If he doesn't take that sack and he throws the football away, which he had the opportunity to do, the 49ers would have been facing 3rd and 15. And it's not a great situation by any means. But number one, 3rd and 15 is a lot more convertible than 3rd and 23. There's more plays for that. Second of all, if you pick up 10 yards, you're now potentially closer to Mitch Wisnowski's range. And you have a scoring opportunity. The 49ers lost this game by 1 point. And I do think if they had their kicker, we would be talking about a field goal being made there, and this would be a different ball game. But I just think that there's been a couple instances this year where I love Brock's escapability. I love him creating extra time, getting space. But I think there's a couple of times here and there that he needs to get rid of the football. So that's something I hope him and Brian Greasy talk about and he gets a little bit better at, is just you got to be like Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to hold him and know when to fold him. And sometimes he's got to know when to fold it. Just get rid of that football out of bounds, especially when you're outside the pocket. So I thought that there was a couple criticisms of Brock Purdy in this game. Do I think Brock's going to bounce back? I have no doubts. Brock Purdy will figure this thing out, but they've got to get something done there. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the 49ers red zone ineffectiveness. And what you're seeing is the 49ers are going to some of the looks that work for them, and the look is working, but it's not the normal receiver that's open. So you're looking for a certain guy as your primary, then you've got to work through your progressions. And what we're finding is that teams right now are taking away the 49ers primary, especially in the red zone. They're being physical with wide receivers. They're coming up and bodying those guys and getting them off their spots, and they're having to work hard. And what's going on right now is the primary in those is not exactly open. So Brock's not getting through his progressions fast enough to find the receivers in the backside of his progression. Part of the reason is you're used to reading a whole field with a lot more space and a defense that's giving you more separation. Now it's tighter windows, tighter throwing lanes. And so he's trying to make reads, but he's also trying to wait on players to get open. And it's been a little bit of a problem for Brock in some situations. Now, I also think, and I think it's nice to criticize everyone that's a part of this, I think there has been opportunities for the 49ers in the run game, and maybe a running back misread the hole, didn't get to where he's supposed to go, bounces outside. We saw it with Jordan Mason. We saw it with Isaac Guerendo. Those are the effects of Christian McCaffrey not being in this 49ers run game. That's why when you had Mostert, you had an explosive run game. That's when you had Christian McCaffrey, explosive run game. And it's not that Jordan Mason's not good. He's very good. But he's not Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey would have gotten through some of these holes and had explosive carries. And if you guys have me on Patreon, you know I go through those breakdowns and I talk about some of the Jordan Mason misses or some of the hesitations that sometimes cost the 49ers extra yards or huge explosives. It's not anything big. I mean, he might still go for 15 yards. It's just little subtle coaching points. Well, in this game, there was opportunity for Guerendo to get inside and really have a shot at a touchdown, and he missed it by bouncing outside. So the 49ers are feeling the effects of not having Christian McCaffrey in the red zone. But I also think first downs have been pretty basic for Kyle Shanahan this year. And I like to share criticisms when I think that it's deserved. And even though Kyle stepped it up and was more creative in the red zone in this game, I thought he still ran the ball a little bit too much on first down. You get inside the 10-yard line, and it always feels like it's first down. And I like feeding the beast. I like giving the ball to Jordan Mason. And if you have a run game that they can't stop, yeah, roll with it. But I think that there needs to be a little bit more play action. I kind of started talking about that last week, and I think Kyle will probably go to that. Some of the guys will break down his tendencies and see that he goes run on first down a lot. And maybe it's one of those old adages where they think you're going to change your tendency so you just stick with it, right? It's like you're going to try to catch them off guard. They're going to guess wrong, and you're going to be right doing it the way you've always done it. But I think the teams are waiting for him to change. They're going to take away Jordan Mason. They're going to put the onus on Brock Purdy in this passing game to figure out a way to score in the red zone. And right now it's been difficult. So some of the criticisms, the running backs not reading the holes correctly, Brock Purdy waiting a little bit too long to come off his reads and his progressions, a little bit down there and not looking to read 2, read 3 quick enough. And then Kyle Shanahan running the ball too much on first down and not allowing the 49ers to kind of run a quick screen or get something else going, run a sprint right option, get Brock Purdy outside the pocket with a play action boot and let him decide, throw a pass, run option type thing for him. So some things that Kyle, I'm guessing, will start figuring in. How much can he do before Seattle? Usually you're rolling with a pretty similar game plan with a few added things implemented in. So we'll see what it looks like. But 49ers luckily have played Seattle a lot. They played against Mike McDonald with Baltimore last year, but they'll have to do a quick turnaround, figure this thing out. But the truth is the 49ers need to get a lot better in the red zone if they want to be, a championship caliber football team and if they want to turn this season around. And I think that's part of the reason things feel weird. They're not executing the way they usually do in the positions they usually do it. But I thought the 49ers offense moved the ball pretty effectively. They moved up and down the field. Just they're not able to capitalize right now. That is the big part, right? So when you have a focus, you focus in and hone in on let's be better in the red zone. So I think that's going to be a point of emphasis this week. I thought the offensive line played pretty good in this game as well. I mean, when you just look at some of the numbers, we'll just kind of talk about a couple of guys from the PFF rankings. PFF had Trent Williams at an 83.8. He was the highest ranked offensive lineman in this football game. and that's in 64 snaps. Aaron Banks actually had a huge bounce back game last week, not so good. This week, Aaron Banks was back with a 81.5 grade, which is really pretty darn good for Aaron Banks. Dominic Pooney and Trent Williams each gave up 3 pressures apiece. And, that's kind of surprising. Those are your 2 pass blockers, best pass blockers, and they're the ones who struggled the most with pressure. And then Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and Colton McKivitz each gave up 2 pressures. And I thought Colton McKivitz continues to get a little bit better, and he's been playing a little bit better this week. Now, for Jake Brendel, it was not a good game for him. According to PFF, he had a 51.8 grade. And I saw a couple plays, including the holding, I think everyone saw live on the TV copy, where he just got beat bad, and decided that he was just going to try to hold. There's also some criticisms about him not slide protecting on that last play. You did have 6, blockers. Jordan Mason did pick up the right guy. So if you have any, wonders about if Jordan Mason got the right guys, you always get the most inside man. He's the most dangerous. He's got the tightest and shortest line to the quarterback. So he picked him up, and you had the outside guy free. Now, I don't know if Jake Brendel saw the second guy coming. I don't know if he knew that. If he did know, he should have slid the protection to the right side. That would have allowed them to have enough bodies. He would have picked up one of those guys, and then Dominic Pooney would have picked up another. There would have been Jordan Mason to pick up the last guy, and they would have got all 6 guys blocked. With that being said, Brock Purdy's got to be aware of the blitz coming. He's got to see that they're not going to be picking him up. And he's got to realize, I got my hot George Kittle open. I need to get rid of the football. And so the problem isn't that they didn't have enough blockers, which scheme-wise means it's correct. They have enough blockers. It's the execution. So, Jake Brendel, you've got to make sure, if you can see it, that you're calling the slide protection. You didn't see it? Well, then Brock Purdy's got to pick you up, and he's got to be able to get rid of the football and not compound this a bad situation by holding on the football a little bit longer. He had George Kittle in space, and he had George Kittle for a long time, and it would have kept the drive going. And the key is to get completions. I know he wanted to get the shot down the field and put them in position to go win this football game, but I think that everyone realizes now that he's got to just make sure he makes the right decision there. But, for the most part, it starts with Jake Brendel. I don't want criticisms for Jordan Mason. He doesn't deserve it because he did the right thing. He made the right block. It's Brendel and then Purdy. And that battery right there's got to make sure they get it right. But I thought overall the offensive line played pretty well. There's always things they could get better at. They still missed run blocks. They still, were not always great in protection. You could tell by the pressures because they did give up pressures. But for the most part, it wasn't clear sacks that Brock Purdy was getting out of, which is nice. And, that's what you want your offensive line to do, be able to be a unit that they can count on. I thought losing Jake Moody in this game was huge, and you could tell the difference in the team once Jake Moody went down. They knew they could no longer count on a field goal, from 50 in. I think that they felt pretty comfortable with Jake Moody kicking field goals from about 50 yards in. And when that happened, the onus was on the 49ers now to score touchdowns. Did the pressure become too much? They did not score in the second half. Did the pressure become too much where they knew they had to do something? Were they putting too much pressure on themselves to make sure they got in the end zone? It could have been huge. And I think what's bad is Jake Moody, should have kicked that ball out of the end zone. And it's returnable. And so he steps up and he tries to make a tackle. You got to appreciate the attempt, the physicality. But, the whole situation's bad. You had bad coverage on the play by the kickoff team, and Jake Moody goes down, and that really ended that football game. 49ers win that game if Jake Moody doesn't get hurt. It's just that simple. They would have gotten a field goal from Jake Moody. They were in position earlier on the Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings instance that I talked about. They would have been up. They would have won this football game, and it's unfortunate, but they didn't, and now they've got to overcome it. And that's the thing, is mistakes and problems like this have to be corrected. Now let's talk about defense. I thought Nick Sorensen had a good game plan, and I thought they executed pretty well for the most part. I have been completely surprised by the fire Nick Sorensen comments after this football game. I don't know what that 49ers defense did that was so bad. Number one, I thought that he did a really good job of slowing down James Conner. I thought they had a good game plan for it. They came in there, brought in the extra guy in the box, and was able to slow down Conner. 6 carries for 9 yards in the first half. That's game plan, that's scheme, that's play calling and execution by your team. Like, your team has to execute no matter what. I thought they did a good job. I thought when it came to the Kyler Murray first touchdown, that the Arizona Cardinals did a good job of giving him a look you hadn't seen a lot during, the Cardinals' time running with Kyler Murray. And so they had an extra player to account for Devondre Campbell. So Nick Bosa came down the line of scrimmage. And I talked about this a little bit in the game preview show, that sometimes you vary the looks of what you're going to do with that outside edge defender. He's not always the read key. You change the read key for a quarterback. So in this instance, they had anticipated that they were going to run this type of look. Bosa's going to crash down on Connor. That's his job. But then Devondre Campbell's going to come up and set the edge and be the edge defender. And if there's no blocker, Devondre Campbell has got Kyler Murray in space. This play's a wash. The problem is Devondre Campbell had a guy on him blocking him, and so it was going to be tough to disengage. Then it gets compounded by the fact that Charvarius Ward comes up as the force defender on the outside, but he gives too much space, and it creates a hole for Kyler Murray, and there's no one catching him. So I think it's an instance where the 49ers made a call, and it didn't work out because of the way the Arizona Cardinals played it. But what I will say is how quickly the 49ers adjusted after that was fantastic. They started changing things up, and after that, Kyler Murray was just giving the ball to James Conner pretty consistently until the design run in the fourth quarter. So I thought he did pretty good there. I thought Sorensen also had some good coverage looks. They were confusing Murray. There was a lull in the 49ers Arizona game where Arizona couldn't move the ball. But also, there's also a bend and don't break mentality. Coming into this game, Arizona was 72% inside the red zone as far as converting touchdowns. The 49ers kept them out of the red zone pretty good for the most part. And so that is that bend and don't break mentality. We're talking about a blocked field goal. Once again, defense holds up. You're talking about some short fields with a Brock Purdy interception. Defense holds up. Like, the defense did a pretty good job in this game, and I don't think Sorensen's the reason that they lost. I think if you look back at Minnesota, you look back at the Rams, and the play calling, the stunting, some of that stuff wasn't very good. I don't think that's what we're seeing right now. You even look back at the Kyler Murray, they go for it on fourth down, right? Game on the line. If they don't get it, Niners win. And Kyler Murray's falling back, and he's getting all kinds of pressure. Leonard Floyd right in his face, free rusher, big, tall guy, and you get the ball completed to, a pretty good wide receiver out there, Marvin Harrison Jr., with Isaac Yedem on him. But it's not the wrong call. It's just not executed the way that you were hoping it was going to be executed. You're hoping of two things. Number one, that Leonard Floyd's going to get there, but Leonard Floyd was getting there pretty fast. I mean, you go back and watch that. He's backpedaling at an all-time speed, Kyler Murray was. And then when you're going to get a ball that floats in the air like that, you're expecting a defender to have closer coverage and be able to drive on that football and knock it away. So it wasn't great coverage by Isaac Yedem, but everything was right with the call. I have no problem with it. That's just Arizona Cardinals beating the 49ers on that. They out-executed the 49ers. You tip your cap. But, the defense is not the reason the 49ers lost this football game. Ineffectiveness on offense and not being able to kick field goals is the reason the 49ers lost. 49ers did not score a lot of points in this game. They scored 23 points, and 7 of them came on a blocked field goal. Not good enough. The 49ers, that team, Arizona, was 30th ranked. They gave up 26.8 points per game. The 49ers should have scored 30 on offense and had the 7 on top of it from the blocked field goal. So it was ineffectiveness on offense that really drove to the defense giving up 24 points against a really good Arizona Cardinals offense. They average over 24 points a game. That's the problem. Is I think Sorensen's catching a little bit of heat here. Did he have mistakes? Of course, everyone does. But I don't think that he called a bad game. I thought he did a pretty good job. James Conner in the second half, the 49ers made him look like an absolute monster. I mean, he looked like Christian Okoye out there. They could not bring him to the ground. Bad tackling in the second half. How much of that is heat? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the cause was, but there were times that it looked like they had him hemmed up, which means the defense, they were playing it right. They just couldn't finish. And I think that's going to be one of the things that I know Nick Sorensen's been trying to beat in their head for weeks is you have to finish. And they didn't. And so that was a big problem for the 49ers in the second half. Tackling in the second half was not good. If they would have made some key tackles, whether that was, other situations, it would have been good. I mean, one tackling in the first half that the 49ers had, I believe it was Hufanga. They showed blitz off the edge, and Hufanga didn't play in the second half, so I know for a fact it was first half, but he showed blitz, and when he came up, Kyler Murray checked to a screen pass because he thought Hufanga was coming on the blitz and going to throw it right outside of him, and it was a bluff. And what a great job by Sorensen. Yeah, show blitz and then bluff, get Kyler to call play. Hufanga's right there. All he has to do is make the tackle. It's a loss, a negative play, and it forces 3rd and long. And it didn't work because Hufanga missed the tackle. It was unfortunate. Those were the kinds of mistakes that were being made, and it was lack of execution by key contributors. And then Hufanga gets hurt. He hurts his wrist. That wasn't good. I thought we saw some confusion again from the safeties. There's another play. Jair Brown and Charvarius Ward talking before the play, and they're snapping the ball, and Jair Brown's still looking at Charvarius Ward talking to him, and then they both go with the same receiver. We've got to have some better communication between those guys, and I think the safeties are really becoming a little bit of an issue for the 49ers. I think it's been clear this season they have missed the veteran leadership of Tashawn Gibson, and they've missed the ability of Talanoa Hufanga to get everyone lined up right. I think Jair Brown is a really athletic football player. I think he's very talented, but I think right now he's still struggling when it comes to understanding his role within this 49ers defense. We've seen too many confusions between that back end, that secondary, and the safeties and corners. So somebody's got to right the ship there. And Hufanga being injured again doesn't necessarily lean into the fact it's going to be him. But that confusion gave Michael Wilson a completion on the 3rd down. It was just wide open. No one went with them. Both of them went with the outside receiver. Never should have happened. It's completely on that confusion with Jair Brown. Malik Mustafa, I thought, played decent in this game. I thought he was competing the whole time, and that's a tough situation for him to be in. But safeties, they're getting confused on their roles and responsibilities, and it's got to get a lot better. And I definitely think they are missing Tashawn Gibson right now. And so hopefully they'll get this thing ironed out. We're still early in the season, but Jair Brown needs to get it ironed out. We need good play from him. Now, Leonard Floyd, he was making himself known in this football game. I really enjoyed what he did in the game. I thought he played really well. Nick Bosa was the highest graded, according to PFF, with an 87.9 in his 45 snaps. Leonard Floyd was at a 79.1 in his 36 snaps. But Leonard Floyd was getting out there and making plays. And, I was digging it. He had a sack in this football game, and he also had the highest pass rushing grade at 73.3. So he was getting after it. And, I know he's an easy target, and people talk about him a lot, not being as effective. I thought he did a really good job in this game. I was very, very happy with his play. I think he's been consistently putting more pressure on the quarterback, and I think they've done a good job of finding ways to free up Sorensen and Bosa and get them after Kyler. Now, this wasn't a normal heavy volume sack game. If you get to where they're playing from behind, it is. But this is one of those ones you have to rush from certain lanes, right? Rush lane integrity is not like last week against the Patriots where you could just go all guns blazing because Kyler's a guy that can run, but overall is pretty good. Another good performer was D. Winters. He had the best coverage grade in his snaps. He had 10 coverage snaps, and he had a 77.6 grade in those snaps. That's really, really good. Diamond Lenore was the next best in coverage with 74.3. Winters gave up 7 yards. That might translate into the 49ers using D. Winters a little bit more. I think right now, with DFF still being out for a while, Winters is probably going to be your Sam linebacker moving forward. And then I wonder what they do after that. Could we see D. Winters in nickel situations and Devondre Campbell not come up? Now, Devondre Campbell had a couple of plays he made, got his hand up, knocked the ball away. But D. Winters is obviously better than Devondre Campbell in coverage, and he's going to be better than most linebackers in coverage because he's got speed and his instincts, but he's got athleticism to be able to run. and that's huge. Now, Isaac Yedem, who gave up that big catch to Marvin Harrison, actually played really good again on defense. He had a 76.4 grade, and so he's done a very good job of staying ahead of that number and doing a really good job. And he only gave up one catch. That Marvin Harrison catch was the only one on Yedem. And I remember there was a play up the sideline. Yedem had great coverage on Harrison, knocked the ball away. He's got the ability. It's just frustrating you're talking about one play. He really played good in this game. So Isaac Yedem is stepping up. And then, of course, Sam Okawanu played really good against the defense this week with a 77 grade. So give him respect. But when you look at the safeties, it's the safeties that were struggling. Talanoa Hufanga had a 40.2 grade before he went out with his wrist injury. You had Jair Brown with a 42.7 grade. That's not good. And how about Charvarius Ward? Charvarius Ward had a 42.9 grade. It's just been a struggle for the 49ers secondary, but the safety position has definitely not been as good as we were hoping it was going to be. We were hoping they were going to be one of the strengths. And you looked at a guy like Jair Brown, and it looked like he was going to be able to make a lot of plays for this football team, and he just wasn't able to do it. So you've got Lenore and Isaac Yedem that are playing really good right now, and you've got Charvarius Ward who's struggling a little bit. Can't really explain overall why. He's a player that should be a little bit better than he is. But I do think the defense played well enough to win this game. I thought the Cardinals were going to score 20. I thought they were going to have some success on the ground, especially, down the stretch, and they did. I expected them to get to 20. And I expected the 49ers to score a lot more points than that. And they didn't. They weren't able to execute on offense, and that ultimately ends up being the downfall for the 49ers. So there's plenty more, I'm going to be looking at and breaking down. But this is just my upon further review, what I saw and how the 49ers can get better. Now, I will say this. What do you do to get better? Well, first off, what you do is you recognize what mistakes you're making. Number two, you go back and you start making sure you hone in on those techniques and make sure you get it right. If there's any scheme flaws, you fix it. You find out how teams are playing against you. You start preparing for everything that you can see. And you just have to start being able to adjust on the fly. Teams are going to give you your very best. They know how good you are. So you got to be able to adjust on the fly. I've seen good adjustments from the 49ers over the last 2 weeks. But you've got to make sure you stay ahead of everything. So can they fix it? Absolutely. We've seen them right the ship before. Last year they lost 3 in a row in the middle of the season. Now they've lost, one here that was really tough. They've got to get back at it. They've got to beat Seattle. You beat Seattle, it's going to feel a lot better. I know you got the Chiefs coming up, but you'll have a win in the division. You'll be sitting there right up there towards the top of the NFC West. Not like any of the NFC West teams are playing really good right now. So you have opportunities, but you have to go out there and you have to play well. You have to coach well. You have to execute. And so far, that's been a problem for the Niners this year. We'll see if they can right the ship. Thank you guys for joining me. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening to audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.